You're listening to Civic Media. You can tune into any of our live shows on any radio station across the state with the Civic Media app. Find us in your phone's app store and listen anytime, anywhere.
Good morning and welcome to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. Good morning to you, Calvin. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Earl. How are you?
I'm doing fine, man. One more day of this cold tomorrow.
Yeah, that's what they say. I mean, I almost got out the winter jacket this morning.
Almost. Well, it really is and requires, dressing warm, man. It's cold.
I guess you didn't listen to your mother, Calvin, then, if you didn't get it out, because it was it's under 40 degrees. Freeze warnings tonight.
Yeah, so anything
this is called autumn.
Any vegetation you still have in the ground is, and flowers, they're gonna see the end probably in the next day or so. And those that are hardy enough to survive, they'll make it. But those things that
mum's the word. Mums make it.
So if by now you don't know who that is, that's my co-host Sandy Williams. Good morning to you, Sandy. How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. In fact, this perks you up. It's crisp.
Well, hey, it is the middle of October.
Yeah, this is on time.
So what comes after October?
Yeah, well, November, and actually, I did read today that now like we had La Nina last year, which made it warm, and they're thinking about we're going to have El Nina this year,
which makes it cold.
So we'll see.
Hey, Sandy, that kind of news I don't want to hear.
Mm. Well, just put your head in the sand with everyone else.
All right. So this morning we were going to be joined by Reggie Jackson, but Reggie has a family emergency. He called me shortly a few minutes ago, and so we're going to reschedule Reggie. But we got a lot to talk about, as always, with Sandy. We're going to cover a lot of different areas. Sandy, one of the things we wanted to begin with is a man is running for president of the United States is threatening that he's going to use the military against his enemies.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the clip. It was totally alarming, and I told you this is just something I feel compelled that we talk about, because this is a presidential candidate who said, this is the context. He said, look, immigration is a problem. These immigrants are an army. They're an invading army. They're a terrible problem. But he said a bigger problem is the lunatic left, the enemy within. And then he described the enemy within as the lunatic left, meaning, I guess, liberals. And that these people needed to be dealt with, and he would deal with them with the National Guard, or if necessary, he said, with the federal army. And, the National Guards, the commander-in-chief of each National Guard is the governor of each state, but ultimately it can be nationalized. And what is he going to do with the military? Is he going to round up the lunatic left and put him in camps? What is the military? What role could they possibly have? And who is the lunatic left? Is it me? Is it you, Earl? I mean, what is the definition of the lunatic left that gets you to the position of being endangered by a Donald Trump presidency in which he will enlist the military, of which he is the commander-in-chief? And would our military test the order of command? Would they honor a command from the military to do something which actually goes directly against the Constitution, which is what each military person swears to uphold? I was astounded. I was both astounded and very concerned, because it's a really unhinged thing to say. And if it isn't unhinged, if it's premeditated, then it's truly dangerous.
So, Sandy, I'm not surprised at anything Donald Trump says or does. He's been saying things for a long time. What I will say is when Hillary Clinton used the verbiage deplorables, she was ostracized and basically made mockery of. But Donald Trump can use lunatic left, and that's all right.
Well,
nobody responds to that.
And talk about them as being criminals. Criminals to be rounded up by the military. I mean, you use the military to round people up. You don't use the military to arrest them and try them for crimes. And what is it they're going to get rounded up for? Is it simply criticizing the government or critiquing American policy, trying to improve it by critiquing it? Because, critiquing the policy to some, I guess, is un-American.
So I'm sorry, Sandy, this doesn't get any better. We're 3 weeks out. We've been talking about Donald Trump and Republicans, you and I, for the last year or more as we've come, beginning of this election cycle. And we've been careful and cautious to not appear to be on one side or the other. But the truth of the matter is Donald Trump and what Republicans are talking about is a threat to this nation. And it's a clear threat to the democracy of this nation. And it's time people say that.
Well, I think
without hemming and hawing.
Yeah, I mean, the point is the Republicans have lost the control of the tiller, okay? So I'm not going to say Republicans as a broad group because there are people who identify as Republicans who wouldn't, I'm sure, agree with what Donald Trump says he's going to do. But the point is that he is a person who, the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, all these people who served under him, John Bolton, the guy who was the head of national security,
prominent people
have all warned us that this is what we can expect, okay, that this person has talked about doing this in the past, that he asked the Secretary of Defense if he couldn't simply shoot protesters in the legs to get rid of them. This is a person whose thought process runs like his mouth. And, I think that to declare him a danger is not to risk his personal safety, but it's to declare to the country that the country is endangered if we pull the lever and vote for this person. And the action we should take isn't violence. It's simply we need to vote to make sure that this person who has violence in mind, using the military, using the National Guard to deal with the enemy within, which he defines as the lunatic left, is an indefensible posture. I'd be interested if any of our conservative callers could possibly agree with it. And if what they want to do is excuse it as simply an erratic thing that Donald Trump said but doesn't mean, I think that we all ought to stand up and worry about that because we have to stop making excuses for this man.
So, Sandy,
and we have to listen to what he says.
I'm not as alarmed by those who we know who are conservative callers because we already know.
No, but my point is that these are the people who are going to vote for him. And the people who are going to vote for him need to think about what he says he's going to do, how he behaves, and what the people who have operated most closely with him, not just 3 or 4 people, not just 10 or 20 people, but 50 or 60
but
people.
Sandy, my fear is the silent people who know the man is insane and dangerous, but they're going to vote for him anyway. That segment of his supporters who, will call and support him and back him up. We know who they are, and we know how open they are about their love for him. But there's so many Americans apparently that we don't know because it's a 50-50 race who are going to vote for this man who should know better.
And they
should know better.
And we should talk to that because there are segments that we were talking about before the show of the people who are angry with their situation seem to be gravitating toward Donald Trump. He has tapped into anger and individualism, okay? And those two streaks are the things that seem to be prompting people to be in favor of him, whether they're strongly in favor of him or are pulling the lever because of their anger, and they're simply angry at the system, and this is their way of showing us that they're angry with the way things have gone. But it doesn't matter. A person who pulls the lever for Donald Trump is pulling the lever for this person who is saying they're going to behave like this, talking about what they're going to do to our government, and they ought to sit down and analyze the things that he says he's going to do to figure out which, if any of them, could possibly be beneficial to them, this person who's going to pull the lever in his favor.
Well, when you've been led to believe that your situation is based on somebody else, some other American or some other person who's coming into the country, and so it's their fault that I'm struggling.
Well, what he's done effectively, since we're angry with our situation and we don't know why, he said it's them, but he hasn't painted their picture clearly. It's not a photograph of somebody. It's a vague description of the deep state, okay, this government that doesn't do what you need them to do and seems to be operating freewheeling. It's them.
Well, Sandy.
Or it's the immigrant. It's not a clear picture of an immigrant. It's just a broad group of people who he can paint as them.
Hey, Sandy.
Yeah.
People of color.
Yeah.
And so that's what it is. And the other day at his rally, there were swastikas all over in the audience. Donald Trump should have said, hey, take those down. If he was a fair man, he would have said, take those down. I don't want those at our rally. He continued this conversation with the swastikas all over. So people can say whatever it is they want to say about why they're supporting Donald Trump, but there are many people who are supporting Donald Trump for all the wrong reasons. And our nation is in trouble. And those people who continue to support him.
Well, I would say this. I would say our nation is in trouble if we elect Donald Trump. I would say the nation currently seems to be headed in the right direction with projects and programs that are aimed at the Tom, Dick, and Mary that I hope we're talking to.
Well, we got a lot to talk about. 855-752-4842. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays is my co-host Sandy Williams on the Earl Ingram Show.
Oh, the shadows of doubt are in many a mind, looking for an answer they're never gonna find. But they better decide, 'cause they're running out of time. For these are the days of decision. Oh, the games of stalling you cannot afford. Dark is the danger that's knocking on the door. And the far-reaching rockets say you can't wait anymore. For these are the days of decision.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. If you're joining us looking for Reggie Jackson, award-winning editor of The Independent, he had an emergency this morning. He won't join us today, but we'll certainly get him back as soon as he's able. Sandy, again, our phone lines are open at 855-752-4842.
Well, the music, just because I picked that out. So this music is all about the decision process for voting and the need to vote. And there's been a lot of music about voting, and we're closing in on. We got 3 weeks from today, so 21 days.
So we were talking about, the fact that Donald Trump is making threats of bringing the military in against people he deemed to be his enemies and people on the left. And so I have to, you're challenging the fact that this seems to be something that's so far off the norm that he can say these kind of things and yet his popularity is increasing.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the issue.
Yeah, I mean, to me, what it is that he's become a symbol rather than, and the symbol is more important than anything about what it is he says he's going to do. He's the symbol of angry Americans, and he's been able to tap into people's frustrations with their situation, whatever it is, and they've decided that Donald Trump reflects that. It resonates for them, but he hasn't, and he's promised vaguely to solve all problems. And so the part of your reptile brain that doesn't think too clearly, that is angry and frustrated and drawn to this person who seems to reflect that and resonate that, stops thinking and stops asking questions when he talks vaguely about solving health problems, without ever any kind of a precision, about cutting all your taxes and making sure that everything is beautiful. Whenever he talks about things, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be the best in the world. I mean, anyone who talked like this, if you had your brain on and were thinking, you would turn your back on them and say, look, I got to talk to someone who's a real person, not someone who's simply selling BS.
So people are angry, Sandy, because, and they need to know why they're angry. And they need to know because of policies that have basically left behind some of the many American people.
Well, some of it's policies. Some of it is the evolution of the economy without guidance from the government, okay? So the government hasn't provided all the kind of training that's necessary when technology is destructive, right? There's a destructive side to new technology because it destroys the jobs of the old technology that it replaced. And we as a general government have fallen short on the ability to come in and rapidly retrain people. We put them onto unemployment. We give them unemployment checks, which demeans them, and then we don't retrain them, okay? And other economies have been much more effective at retraining in the face of technological evolution. And the evolution towards a world economy, I mean, part of that evolution is just the rest of the world getting off its knees after World War II, when, we had a 25-year vacation. We had a honeymoon after World War II. We were the only economy, and then we weren't. And ever since we weren't, we've failed to have a government that's responsive to guiding the architecture of our economy, our socioeconomic economy, in a manner that has caused us now to have all these problems. Tom, Dick, and Mary's problems relate to health care, relate to education costs, relate to child daycare costs, relate to housing costs, all of which could be impacted by government policy, but is currently in the process of being attended to.
So Sandy, Dr. Martin Luther King wrote a book. I remember reading it in the early 70s. He wrote it in 1958 called Now is the Time. He talked about the day that technology was going to eliminate many of the jobs. Back in 1958, he foresaw that. We've got a government who knew that and chose not to do anything about it. And so we can say that, this happened because of the technology, but our government was aware. And so people are angry. The government did not do what it could have done to look out for its citizens. And so all of these people are left in the lurch. But they seem to believe that they're left in the lurch because of Democrats. And Democratic policies have somehow been the reason that they are struggling the way they're struggling.
I think the reason the Democratic policy hasn't been implemented is the filibuster. It's the gridlock in Washington, the inability of Washington to get things accomplished. we have gotten things accomplished as Democrats during the brief periods of time when they have the Senate and the House of Representatives and the presidency. Barack Obama got affordable health care, which was a remarkably big, to tamper with the healthcare system was to take on lots of political giants that sleep under the rug but are difficult to move. But the situation really requires that we look at what's going on, and instead of simply being angry, people ought to look at what it is that might promise improvement in their situation. And it isn't a modest tax cut, okay? Because taxes aren't the problem for Tom, Dick, and Mary.
All right, 855-752-4842. It's Tuesday, and if you're just joining us looking for Reggie Jackson, we've got to reschedule him. He had an emergency, but we're going to troop on anyway. You're tuned into a Tuesday edition of the Earl Ingram Show. My guest, our co-host, is Sandy Williams.
And the prize of the victory will belong to the bold. For these are the days of decision. Yes, these are the days of decision.
You're listening to Civic Media. Find the latest news, information, and archives of all your favorite shows on the Civic Media website, civicmedia.us.
People moving out, people moving in. Why? Because of the color of their skin. Run, 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 but you sure can't hide.
All the confusion.
Temptation.
Vote for me and I'll set you free. Rap on, brother, rap on. Well, the only person talking about love, man, brother, is the preacher. And it seems nobody's interested in learning but the teacher. Segregation, determination, demonstration, integration, aggravation, humiliation, obligation to our nation.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. So we're talking about and continuing our discussion about the fact that Donald Trump has made some vile threats about liberals and apparently those who are opposed to him, using the military, to punish people who don't support him.
I mean, it's one thing to just simply talk about the opposition. It's one thing to paint them with a brush that's intended to be, this whole kind of polemic about Marxists and communists, and that's all speech, right? And it's not an actual threat, although it's speech designed to stir people up in an extreme kind of way. But to talk about using military force against political opponents who he describes as left-wing lunatics, okay, that's just an extraordinary thing that I don't think it's unprecedented. If a presidential candidate talked like that, I think that people would turn their back on them very quickly.
So I don't want to refer to them as political opponents. They're American citizens, for heaven's sakes.
Well, I'm just saying that speech during campaigns can get pretty extreme, but this is beyond extreme. This is to talk about something that is designed to have a chilling effect, and it's designed, I think, to reflect the man's actual thought process, because during the time he was president, he wanted to shoot demonstrators in the knees. He asked the Secretary of Defense if we couldn't just do that. He asked the Chief of Staff if we couldn't use our military against these people.
So where are his supporters today? You can't beat him for calling any other time. They want to point the finger at Hillary Clinton. They want to point the finger at Kamala Harris. They want to point the finger at Democrats. Where's their response today? Even though I know they still support him in that. Let's go to Mike from Kenosha. Good morning to you, Mike. How you doing?
Hey, good morning. Thanks for taking my call. Wouldn't it be nice if we were able to talk about the Green Bay Packers instead of this insurrection attempt on our nation?
Yeah.
My gosh.
Well,
So,
Well, they were pretty good. I have to say, that was a solid. We could take a minute, because that was a terrific game. That they actually looked like contenders.
They're a lot of fun to watch, that's for sure. But here we are back in reality. And by the way, we need to pay very, very, very close attention to what is going on here. Let's just for a moment take a look at what the morning after would look like. Okay, Donald Trump wins, and he starts rounding up, getting his imposing, the military and getting the National Guard out and going from town to town, city to city, state to state, rounding up people, illegals, or many of them are illegals. He even included the illegal asylum people as being part of this big, huge roundup. So what we could absolutely assume is going to happen in city after city, state after state, is protests are going to come up. Citizens are going to make their voices heard. They're going to be seen. And all of a sudden now we have military, we have National Guard, and we have protesters. And if we have a Donald Trump in office, what do you think is going to happen to the protesters? And you can count on martial law. The moment there's any unrest, any large-scale protests, I don't care if it be a 1 million-man march in Washington, D.C., Donald Trump would claim and invoke martial law. All this happening, and we have the biggest cheerleader is the number one news source on TV that still, over this weekend, Earl, claimed to be fair and balanced to this day. So, can you imagine the morning after what the risks that we have in front of us? And we have this group of people that are so loyal that no matter who provides what level of evidence that they've been duped and they've been lied to, they won't listen to anybody. They will throw 20-year relationships away over somebody they've never met.
So they're clearly they're clearly not going to change their direction. The people who support him going to go down with him. And Mike, you're talking about what happens if the Democrats win.
The Republicans
win. If the Republicans win, but even if the Democrats win, these people are still not going to accept it. Well, and they'll still be following.
But Mike, I think the picture you portrayed is a very realistic portent of what it is that might happen, because you're right that when he sets about rounding up, he says he's going to increase the force of the ICE by 10,000 so that they can carry out this roundup, and he's talked about using the National Guard and the Army if necessary to carry out this roundup, and he will end up, he says, rounding up million, like the world has never seen before, like his constant verbiage, rounding up millions and millions of people, which of course there will be a boomerang effect from that. There will be reactions, there will be protesters, and then the question, you're very right, is how does he handle those protests? Well, I guess he would label those protesters the dangerous lunatic left, the ones that are trying to undermine the government, and we can be pretty sure then how he will handle it, because he's told us. So, I think the threat to the stability of our country is extreme, and I think you've painted a very accurate picture, and I think people who are going to vote for him ought to think about the morning after and all of this bravado talk, and if it gets implemented.
Well, the people who are going to vote for him apparently agree with all of that. Because if they didn't agree with that, they've heard him say the same thing you and I heard. They heard him make those statements.
Well, if they agree with that, then they need to look at themselves in the mirror each morning while they're shaving or otherwise primping.
Well, the reason I say, Sandy, that they agree with it is because they heard him make the statement. They have not come out and said that's a game changer for us. Those who call here and support him on a daily basis aren't calling now. We're talking about the ones who we know support him. But I'm talking about the people who are silent and are going to allow this to happen with their votes. And so they could prevent this. But so what are they doing?
Well, I mean, the issue, he's painted and a bunch of people have bought into the notion that immigration is a big threat, and all these immigrants in the country are somehow a threat to the nation, and we need to purge ourselves of them. Okay, he talked about how they're ruining our genes. I mean, he got into actual racial talk, but the fact is
that's what's at the root of it.
But these people need to sit back and think, okay, that's bravado, that's talk. What's this going to look like? What's it going to feel like? And how is it going to be accomplished? And when you get down to the look, feel, and how, it's a frightening picture. All of these people should have been terribly angry about the fact that when Congress acted to try and put together a bipartisan bill to have an orderly process for dealing with all of this, it was deep sixed by Donald Trump because he wants the drama of the problem, and I think he likes the idea of the drama of his solution, which is this massive roundup, which is the most un-American kind of picture you can ever paint. We still have shame about our roundup of the Japanese during World War II.
Hey, Mike, you want to finish your thought?
Yeah, and I'm just, we just touched on society's problems. The economic ripples through our society and impact is going to be worse than, the civil strife. So we need to take a good, hard look at reality and what the morning after.
Hey, Mike.
Because it's ugly.
My fear, thank you very much for the call. My fear is we're not going to. Tom from Richland Center, you're next up, sir. Go ahead.
Hey, guys. Not making light of anything you're talking about, but Earl, I got a place for you out in the sticks where we grow our own food if it gets to that. Come on.
You say what?
Covered.
You have what?
You can come out to our place if the boogeyman comes. We'll take care of you out here.
Hey, what boogeyman? You think that what Donald Trump is talking about is not real?
No, I'm saying if it does happen. I don't think it's going to happen, but if it does happen, I got you covered. That's all I'm saying.
All right,
I appreciate all your hard work.
All right, go ahead.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for the call.
Well, Mike made a good point about the economic effect, because Wall Street has predicted that the growth of GDP would definitely, the growth rate would go down if, in fact, Donald Trump could effectively purge us of all of the immigrants that he's talking about eliminating, because actually they have had a positive effect on the growth of our GDP.
Well, so Sandy, here's a guy named George, and he says, Earl and leftist Sandy, of course, illustrating lunatic hyperbole. So this is not lunatic hyperbole, sir. Read what Donald Trump is saying, or maybe if you don't choose to read, then listen to him. And he clearly is making these statements. Nobody's making this up.
I mean, that's
a prime example of what we're talking about.
Well, if to the extent that Donald Trump is preconceiving what he does, that's the shrewdness of it, because he acts in totally outlandish fashion and has ever since he emerged on the scene, and then gaslights people for taking him up on it and talking about the outlandish things he says by basically dismissing them as, well, that's just hyperbole. I'm just exaggerating. I'm just whatever. But he has exercised hyperbole. He has exercised this talk, this process of being outlandish from the beginning. And the question has always been, well, how much of this is outlandish and how much of it is his actual process? When he was president, he asked his aides whether he couldn't use nuclear weapons to solve hurricanes. Okay, this is a very primitive thought process, but it's not in the confines of the secrecy of his discussion with his aides. He demonstrates the same sort of extreme thought process.
You know, Sandy, I would say to George, if what we're talking about is hyperbole, then as Sandy stated earlier, if you look at all of those people who were in his cabinet before, who are giving warnings to everybody, major cabinet positions that were held in his in his presidency, all are saying, "Hey, this man is insane. Don't do it." And more than anybody else, George Bush's vice president.
Well, Dick Cheney.
Of all people.
Well, Les Cheney, but the list is very long.
I know.
And they warned us not just that he was crazy, but that he was dangerous, that he was not fit, that his thought processes were.
And they've done this publicly.
Well, yeah. I mean, they did it publicly because they apparently were worried enough to put themselves at risk because his tendency to seek revenge is clear.
All right, 8:48. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host Sandy Williams and you on the Earl Ingram Show.
I'm not saying two. I'm not even saying three. What I am saying is 4, 5, and 6. May
I remind my honorable colleagues? May I remind my noises on the radio, megaphones on cars, summons from the street of shame, bottle talking bars, posters in suburbia, experts on TV. Don't let them disturb you, they're just the powers that be. No matter who you vote for.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesday is my co-host Sandy Williams, and we're talking about, the inherent danger that appears to be growing more each day as we get closer to this election from Donald Trump and the Republicans. Sandy, the music.
Well, it's about voting. That's by a group I had never heard of, but it fit the bill. It's the Bonzo Dog Doodah Group, which I think is some kind of reggae operation. But it was about voting. We got 3 weeks to vote, and everyone's got, if those who aren't locked in have a decision to make, so it's about that process.
All right, let's go to CJ. CJ, if you're going to talk about the subject we are talking about, you are welcome. I'm not going to allow you to change the subject, so it's on you. That's correct.
I love it when you guys put me in a box.
Hey, CJ, every other radio show in the nation, the people who call deal with the subject matter. So you're not being put in a box. You called, you heard what we're talking about, you want to respond to that, fine.
Yep, we're a country of laws, and there's one president that believes in laws, and there's one that doesn't. And the one that's in office right now doesn't, and that's why you're terrified, because every law enforcement organization, including ICE, immigration...
Hey, CJ, so I'm going to cut you off right now.
Wait a minute.
Wait, hold on, Sandy. So here's what I'm going to say to you, CJ. What do you have to say about Donald Trump making threats to arrest people he disagrees with? What is your thought on that?
What is this president doing?
No,
here's
respond to that, or I'm going to cut you off.
No, I want to ask CJ a question about this, because I've been thinking about this ever since I saw the clip of Donald Trump talking about the lunatic left and the need to use the military to round them up, that they were a bigger danger than the immigrants that he was talking about. So he was differentiating between exercising the law with respect to immigrants. He was talking about using military force against the lunatic left. And I wanted to ask you a question. Are Earl and I part of the lunatic left?
I think pretty close. You're
Okay.
pretty close,
All right. So
because
if we're close, if we're part of the lunatic left, then should I be fearful when Donald Trump gets elected that the military will show up at my door because of the views that I have expressed publicly?
Well, what has this President Biden done?
No. I'm asking, see, Donald Trump is the one who set the table for this discussion, because Donald Trump is the first person I've ever heard from the presidential stage talk about using the military to suppress those people who he felt were a bigger danger to the public. And he described that danger as being people who represent a political view which he describes as the lunatic left.
Sandy, CJ understands that. He's not going to respond to that.
Well, I think he ought to. I'm just asking these questions because this is the way you go through a process in the university, for instance, to make yourself think about it. Because you're talking now about a candidate that you support who's talking about using government suppression with respect to political views. And I just am horrified by it. And first of all, am I lunatic left? I don't know. I view myself as a centrist. But if I expose myself as being in disagreement with Donald Trump, I guess that makes me a lunatic left person. I mean, what do you think about his threat, CJ? Just answer that question. Don't deflect it by talking about the other candidate or whatever. What do you think about his discussion about using either the National Guard or even, if necessary, he said the military, the federal military, to deal with this enemy from within, which he described as the lunatic left?
Well, there's one candidate that wants to eliminate ICE, and there's one that wants.
All right. Thank you very much, Rico. I mean, it's a waste of time. He's not going to respond.
Also, this candidate that he's referring to doesn't want to eliminate ICE. I don't know what. I think they talked about reforming ICE. She talked about reforming ICE at some point, but she has announced that she would, number one, sign that bill that called for adding 1,500 people to ICE immediately, and she's by no means opposed to ICE. And I think we'd find that there are a number of law enforcement agencies who favor Kamala Harris.
So, we've just spent this time continuing to talk about the inherent threats of a man who clearly is off kilter. And I don't care what you say about Kamala Harris and the Democrats. There's no comparison with the threats to democracy that this man and those who support him present. No comparison whatsoever. And on the other side, we're gonna talk about, the black vote and the fear that the Democratic Party has with it. So hang on if you're on the phone lines. We'll come to you first on the other side. 855-752-4842. You're tuned into the Earl Ingram Show with my co-host Sandy Williams.
I'd rather express feelings. My warmest feelings. Only the other day I was kissing a French approval through a photograph, and words again. I said that.
The national news cycle never stops, but it can be hard to find news about your local community. Civic Media is dedicated to providing quality local and state news coverage across Wisconsin. With the Civic Media app, you can get notifications about local stories that matter to you and your community. Find the free Civic Media app in your phone's app store and choose notifications from the menu to tell us what kind of news you want to hear about.